Good morning, class. I'm kidding. It's like 7 p.m. 7:30. So we're gonna talk a bit about Vivaldi again because they have come up in the news. They have made a smug comment, and it's valid. It's valid. But what they said was our mission is not AI. Was basically the only thing they said. Um, in a climate where there's so many people that don't want fucking AI integrations in their browsers, that's great. That'd be fantastic. It would be better if it was on a good fucking web browser. So here's my contention, right? Vivaldi does a lot of cool open source stuff. If you check their GitHub, they got all, people will say, oh, most of it, like 95% of it is open source. It's just like this one little fucking thing called the UI that is not open source. And guess what the problem with that is? So not only is this a horrible argument because if you're free software extremists, you'll know the saying that if there is one line of code that is proprietary, your entire program is proprietary. It is no longer a open source program, no matter how much of it is open source. If you fuck up that one thing and you add one bit of proprietary code, you have made a proprietary program. That's why I said Winamp was a problem, is because they didn't own most of their own source code. You can't open source it because it's all binaries, it's all blobs, it sucked. So Vivaldi has this one little thing, which is their user interface, and that's where most of their bugs are happening, if I'm being real. So the when you're reliant on a developer to make a program for you and you can't send PRs to it because obviously if you're having UI bugs, if you're having problems with Vivaldi itself, you're not going to be able to post a PR to their GitHub because technically you can't really see what they're doing even if the software they use is open source because some of these bugs were actually Chromium bugs which were supposed to have been patched but it ended up taking them years to fix them for some reason. It's really weird. I am not entirely sure, but I am somewhat convinced that part of this is because they don't have a big enough team to deal with Linux. And since I'm not a Windows user, I don't get to experience Vivaldi on a Windows system where so here's a bug that I had, which was actually kind of a deal breaker because it was pissing me off so much, was it has since been fixed, but it took literal years for this bug to get fixed, even though it was fixed on Stream Chromium a long time ago. And it was that if I was like in a window right here and I selected this text, if my cursor left the window, and I started typing in that box, it would start typing in backwards, like my letters would come in before the cursor, rather than after the cursor. And so it was kind of like I don't know why that was a bug. I don't know what was happening there. I don't know if it just affected Linux, but there's a whole forum thread about that one bug, and it pissed me off to no end. So, with this closed source browser, because the only part that matters, like if I wanted open source Vivaldi, I would use Chromium, like a Google Chromium. But people decide to use this closed source browser, and it became like a running joke with the Linux cast, is he would use this browser and it would just keep fucking up. Like every month or so, you make a video saying how much he hates Vivaldi, but he continued to use it, and I do that too. I'll use software that I know is broken because I expect it to get better eventually. But here's kind of the thing: is when you have a team like theirs who doesn't really seem to have the numbers or the level of quality control you would expect from a closed source product, you have this problem where if you had open source from the get go and you just let people do their forking thing or whatever the fuck you needed to do, if you just let them do that, they could contribute back to your browser and fix these bugs that are they piss me off. But uh, it sort of lowers your reputation as a developer. And open source developers may not even be as skilled as you, but because they allow contributors, they can get people that are more skilled and users to fix these bugs for you. And so because of that, I'm like, look, I don't trust your developers. I don't trust your releases. I don't trust your binaries. I don't even think that anything malicious is going on. I just think it's buggy, and I think that's going to come back to bite me at some point. You know. So I'd rather, obviously I've got Brave on my taskbar here, but the whole selling point with we don't use AI, that would be cool if it was like an open source browser, because then I would have a certain level of trust in the developers to fix these bugs. But because it's a closed source browser and I know that nobody's contributing to it, I'm like, okay, well, now I just have a substandard browser that it's cool, it doesn't have AI, you know? Like, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's just I would like to use this browser, but I'm not convinced that unless they open source and allow contributors to contribute fixes to their source code, I don't think it's gonna work out for me, really. The other problem too, though, is so since it's Chromium, I use an extension called Ad Nauseum, which works on Brave, and once Manifest V2 dies, I don't know, I might just switch to UBO Lite. We'll see. But with Vivaldi, they have a built-in ad blocker, which is something I actually like. Is I want to use this built-in ad blocker. Brave Shields is really good when you set them to aggressive. People will say that the shields don't catch everything, and that's because they forgot to set them to aggressive. That was basically it. It sets it to a default, and then yeah. But with Vivaldi, uh, their ad blocker just like lets a bunch of shit in, and the more obscure websites you go to, the worse that problem gets. So that's a problem for me who likes to use really obscure websites that have ads in them. But whatever. So I'm stuck using an extension, and that doesn't work on mobile. So on mobile, I use a sync, because I'm not very Libra or whatever. I have my Android phone and it's got Brave on it, so I can sync my passwords and bookmarks and stuff between my browser and like my desktop and my phone. And that's important to me because I'm lazy and I like all this shit to be available. But with Vivaldi, I can get the sync, except what's happening is I need a separate browser for an ad blocker. That's basically what it comes down to. So that's kind of where I'm at with Vivaldi. I just find it's not quite. It's like a dollar short of all the open source web browsers out there. I can endorse Brave. They're fine. I'm sure they're paying me basic attention token for saying that, but whatever. Uh, I just I like their message. I just don't like the way, or sorry, I like their message. I don't even necessarily agree with or disagree with being closed sourced if you think it helps your brand or whatever. That's your choice as a developer. I don't give a fuck. What I do give a fuck about is if your browser fucking works. And that is the problem I have with Vivaldi is I don't see it working correctly, at least on my system. And I've thrown it on different machines before, and it's a lot of the shit is like, okay, I'm just gonna switch to a real browser, you know. Sorry, Vivaldi team, if you ever see this, get good. Sorry, like if you were open source, I could just say, talk is cheap, send patches, but I can't because you don't accept patches because your source code's not open. So, get good, figure out your shit, and then maybe we can talk about not having AI in your browser. See you guys later. Bye.